I will be whole. I wanna be, I gotta be made whole. I gotta be, it's time to be made whole. I'm gonna be, just wait and see. I will be whole.
Hi there. I'm Dr. Tracee Perryman. Women often manage challenging circumstances differently than men who might have the same business responsibilities and issues. I wanted to speak with someone who has the experience to discuss why this is and who knows when we should focus on the problem and when to focus on ourselves. My guest is a Chief Experience Officer in the financial industry. Let's talk to Kathryn Tucker. Kathryn, we're so glad to have you with us. First question I'd like to ask you is about your recent career change.
Yes.
So can you share with us a bit about your new position and what you expect to accomplish?
Yes. So I'm really excited, and thank you for asking, and thank you for having me here, Dr. Perryman. So I will be taking on a new role. So I was previously a senior vice president at a national financial institution, and now I'm moving into the chief experience officer at another financial institution. I love this role. So the chief experience officer is going to be a reinvention of the chief operating officer. So it's a CXO is what they use in the title now. You're seeing a lot of companies are really evolving and reinventing this role to really focus on the experience. So it's still all things operations strategy. It is a C-suite position as well. So it's a really good opportunity for me. But what I'll be doing is focusing on, employee experience, training, development, empowerment, professional development, member experience, because I will be going to a credit union through multiple channels, whether that be through the retail, banking channel, through marketing, and really just from an expansion perspective. So it's a really fun role. I think it fits a lot about who I am. I love innovation. I love reinventing things, and the experience of whether it's a member, a client, an employee, or a community member is really who I am as a person. And so I'm really looking forward to taking on this new role.
Yes, it is quite a promotion
Thank you.
to oversee the operations of an entire credit union. So tell us, what responsibilities do you anticipate that you'll have that people might not know about?
Yeah, so when you hear CXO or COO, you probably think of, sitting behind a computer, doing some, different administrative duties. But what I think is you think about experience is it's really going to be working one-on-one with team members and with employees. And so even in my previous role and roles that I've had, a lot of times you might see a sales organization or membership organization and you think about, the logistics of it. But really my role is to be a coach. My role is to be a mentor, and my role is to be an empowerer of team members. That's my favorite part about roles like this is so really investing in the people that work at, the credit union for me. The other thing, too, that people may not know about roles like this is how forward-facing we are to the community. I had the opportunity to run a nonprofit organization for several years. And so really that grassroots approach to bringing, banking products, credit union products into communities, particularly communities where maybe you don't see as many financial institutions. And so some of that grassroots work, getting with the communities, doing financial education courses, and then just working very hard to ensure that the people in the community have the products they need to build generational wealth, to grow their business, and really to get by day to day.
Well, and I think that your situation amplifies an issue that we've seen probably for decades in terms of the approach to work and just the shift in culture, where we are starting to pay more attention to the people who work for our organizations and institutions. And I think that it presents an opportunity to leverage the kind of relational skills that we women sometimes intrinsically have.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Dr. Perryman.
So tell me this, think about the course of your career. What have been some of the most challenging aspects as a woman?
So I'm going to give a couple of things. So first is in my role as a coach, as a leader, as a mentor, and as a mother, I love the way that my sister, relate this to me is as women, we are birthers. We birth things. We birth children, but we birth ideas. We birth, entire, businesses and projects. And so as a nurturer and as a mother, I think about, I have 4 children, and because we innately want to be everything to everyone, and from a leadership perspective, one of the biggest difficulties or challenges I would say that I've learned over my years in leadership and larger leadership roles is being malleable and flexible in your approach as a leader. So I learned this through mistake and error. But, if you're leading teams of 12, 20, 30 people, I noticed that each person needs a different thing. So as a mother, I want to be everything to every person. But also sometimes I make presumptions about how someone may want to be coached, or how someone may want to be recognized, or how someone may want to receive criticism. And honestly, having this role, I think, has made me a better mother, because now there are 3 questions. Anytime I'm working with someone, whether it's a mentorship, a coaching, even my own leadership, I believe in managing up as well. And I encourage my team members to do the same thing. My directs, manage me. But I always ask, how do you like to receive feedback? How do you like to be coached? And how do you like to receive criticism? And I'm very straightforward with my words when I say criticism. I know in business we use different words, but the fact of the matter is there's going to be moments where we have to criticize. And I will tell you that has helped that challenge for me, because I've made so many presumptions about how people want to be coached or receive recognition. When I ask that question, I typically get a response I was not expecting. And so for me, it's getting to know each individual, loving each one of my team members, learning to leverage their strengths, and then allowing them to tell me and to coach me on how to be a good leader for them. So that's a challenge. As a woman, we have that nurturing, that desire to be that for everyone.
So being a woman, and being a woman of color in particular, it can be easy to fall in the trap of being excessively nurturing and trying to fulfill expectations from our direct reports, where sometimes we can be in charge and we can have the authority in terms of decision making. And then it seems like we look around and actually the office is running us. So tell me how you deal with that as a woman of color, and how do you deal with challenges to authority and things like that?
So, that has been a challenge for me over the years. But Dr. Perryman, here's what I have found was really, really important for women, particularly women of color, because I think in the women of color, I think is something to highlight, because we've been taught, conditioned internally, so in the house and outside of the house, that we have to do more to be seen. We have to be perfect. And that is very toxic. But what it does is exactly what you said. We're overcompensating. And I have found myself for a long time doing that. And then what happens is you're not enough to yourself, and then you're not enough for everyone. And I have found times where there's so many people that I've made promises to, that I've said I was going to do something and I can't fulfill those promises. Mm-hmm. So what I would say for sure is drawing boundaries. Anytime I enter a relationship, particularly with my manager, I let them know, in my company, I let them know very clear what my boundaries are, when I'm available, when I'm not available. And I stick to those things unless there's extenuating circumstances. So I think a big part is just taking the time to ask yourself, what are my boundaries? A lot of times we don't even know what those are. What are my boundaries? And you have to expressly state to the people who are going to be leading you and the people you're going to be leading, what are your boundaries? And you have to stick to them. If somebody, messages me at 9:00 at night because they want to talk to me about, their dog who's at the veterinarian, that's something that I may not answer, right? If they tell me that their child's in the hospital and, is incredibly ill and needs off work, that's something that I might. But I think you just have to establish those clear boundaries and you have to stick to them. And when somebody crosses the boundary. As women, we have to be comfortable and have the courage to assert ourselves and say no. I've been in many situations where, because of, probably overcompensation, trying to prove myself, some of that conditioning I've had, I'll tend to say, like, for instance, yes to projects that I don't want to say yes to. You have to have the courage to say, thank you very much for considering me for this project, but I, respectfully decline. It doesn't fit within the boundaries that I established, or I just don't have sufficient time, and I want to make sure that the project gets carried on in a way that's going to please the organization. So we have to be comfortable with truth, and we have to be comfortable saying no. And we really have to make sure that we're saying no often, especially when you're a mother and you're nurturing. People are going to come to you all day, every day. And I've gotten a lot better at saying no. I love you, but no.
That is very, very helpful. And speaking of your children, you're a mother of 4, you are nearing your last semester of law school.
Yes.
How do you set time aside for physical and mental self-care?
This has been very tough for me. So first of all, I'm going to recognize my husband. My husband is, I say he's my lover, he's my protector, but he's also my administrator. So he is him and I have open communication. So he is very clear about how we schedule time together. From a mental health perspective, and I want to hit on this for a second, it is a lot to juggle. And one thing that I found myself struggling with is me. How do I find time for me? Because, they use the oxygen mask first. I can't be helpful and loving to other people if I'm not helpful and loving to myself. So what I've begun to do is take time for protected time. So for instance, my faith is important to me. My belief in God, and my Sundays are protected. It's a newer thing I'm doing. That's my family day. So that's the day where I have my time of worship when I'm at church. I have time with my family, and I have time with my sisters and my mother, actually, to do that. And then really just taking the time out to focus in on me on the drive. On my drive to work, if it's 45 minutes, instead of me blasting my music, making phone calls, like, I use that time for silence. I use that time to to think about myself and what I'm going to do today. And the last thing I started doing recently that's been, like, very, very, very helpful for me is every night before I go to bed, I walk through my day from the time I woke up, and I say, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for every little thing. And when I go to bed at night, my soul feels at rest because I know that so many amazing things have happened through the day. I've taken the time to focus on them. I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning.
Wow. Those are amazing tips for any woman, no matter what career path she decides to embark on, or even if she were to be a homemaker. We could all use those tips. So are there any other coping strategies in terms of, I know that your father recently passed away, and it seems like you have taken the time to grieve, but you're still doing amazing things. So I just can't believe that's by accident. So what coping strategies could you share with our audience?
I think there's something really important, and I don't know that we think about it as a coping strategy, but it really is surrounding yourself with people who are going to pour positivity into you. My father passed in March. My brother passed about a year and a half ago. He was 32 years old, 6-year-old daughter, married. And so it's really important. I think about the people who I intentionally surround myself with. And I want the audience, I want you to think about who are the people who you're surrounding yourself with, that when you are in your darkest hour, when you are on empty, who is going to fill you up? When you're that car on the side of the road, you thought you could make it to the next location and you run out of gas, who's bringing the gas tank to fill you up? And that's what I would say. I have a group of women, I would include you in that, who, when I'm hurting, grief is hard. You, especially losing a parent, you can feel alone. You can feel like a piece of you is missing. But because of my incredible husband, my family, my tribe, I have a group of women who are just there for me. We're there for each other in times of challenges, but also times of triumph where we're just celebrating each other. And then, women like you, Dr. Perryman, who are constantly pouring in. And when I am in those times where I'm not feeling good from a mental health perspective, my father, he struggled with mental health. A year ago, he was suicidal. And so I look and say, I look to women, your book, Elevating Women Leaders, I look at women who are doing it, and those are the things that help me get up in the morning. So my coping strategy is being completely relentless and unapologetic around being surrounded by people who are going to pour positivity into me, celebrate me. And that's how I think I get through, and who are going to say, hey, you need to calm down, take a couple days, go to the spa, do something, girl, because you're doing too much, right? So those are the type of people I keep in my life, and it's helped me substantially.
Well, I think that it's easy for you to attract those kinds of people because of all of what you bring to the table. Just in the short time that we've chatted, you have such a discerning spirit. And some people are discerning, but they don't amplify what's good. And so when you see positive in people, you speak to it, and you have such a healthy sense of yourself, and you know who you are. And so those things allow you to attract like-minded people. And I have found you in the time that we've known each other to be so impressive.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best. Before we go, the last thing I need to ask you about is your Boundless Leaders blog series. Because just the first post about your grandmother and the detail in which you watch people and you can tell the story is amazing. So tell us about what we can expect from Boundless Leaders.
Yes. And so I think about, for me, in the definition of a boundless leader, my assistant, her name's Melvi Pasuela. I asked her to describe me because I was working on my branding, and she described me as a boundless leader. And so I want to give her credit for that. But a boundless leader is someone who leads with an open heart and who is not afraid to just break the limitations of society, kick through that glass door or jump through that glass ceiling and think big. And, what I wanted to do is, there are so many women and men who have inspired me along my journey. And those I have found the people who are just doing things that are far beyond your traditional limitations. And so, what I'll be doing each week, hopefully on Sundays, like Saturday night, Sundays, is releasing a story. And I don't tell the individuals I'm writing about them. And I have one that'll come out tomorrow. But I release a story about leaders who I believe can inspire others to take that inner boundless leader. Think about when you bind or bound something, you constrict it.
That's right.
And when you add the less, you refuse to be a bird in a cage. You refuse to be constricted or bound by anything. And these are leaders who I have grown and I've been inspired by, or who have impacted me, and I see them impacting others. And I want to tell their stories and why they're boundless leaders, so that the inner boundless leader in every single one of us can come out and you can do the dreams that you have. Who cares what people say? Who cares what traditional limitations are? You've got people who are like flying to different planets and jumping off the edge of a planet. You've got people who are inventing vaccinations, and we've got local leaders who are writing books, who are making things happen. And I want everyone to be like, I want them to see themselves in people, because all the leaders that I write about, I've seen myself in and have made a tremendous impact. And it's also a love letter to them, saying thank you, because you had a piece of making who I am and who I continue to be.
Well, thank you so much for offering that strategy as a coping mechanism, right? And
Yes.
because a lot of times women's mental health is wrapped up in external expectations that don't fit who we are. Thank you for unleashing these stories to the public and continuing to do your part to contribute to the public good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In today's episode, Kathryn gave us 2 important strategies for maintaining balance. In order to balance our demands and our emotions, we must set boundaries with other people. But when it comes to our potential, our dreams should be boundless. On the next Elevating Wholeness, we'll learn how music can be a great part of our self-care toolbox. My guest will be gospel performer and actor Kisha Grandy. Kisha will tell us how her own music and the songs of others helped her through her greatest challenges, and how anyone can depend on the power of song, whether they perform or not. Next time on Elevating Wholeness. This podcast series was funded by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Lucas County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board. Special thanks to Owens Community College for their support of this episode.